Today I thought I'd read an extract from another one of my novels, adult novels, um, Darkness into Light. Actually, I read a slight extract whereupon the main character, Elizabeth, took an overdose. But the story basically is rather semi-biographical and is set in Ireland between 1956 to the late up to 1990, and it reflects the social changes in Ireland from our independence, at least the result of our independence. And the piece I'm going to read today is the decline of the Anglo-Irish gentry. Um, so here I go. The family are called the Courcys. It's set in County Wicklow, south of Dublin. And so here we go. Philipstown House was one of the finest 18th century houses in County Wicklow. Once had been renowned for its ornamental gardens and woods planted with rare trees and stables full of thoroughbred horses. Now its urns, balustrades, and broad terrace steps are cracked and crumbling. The Courcy family came to Ireland with the Normans and prospered through the centuries, but their fortunes declined steadily in the decades following independence. It was as if the family had lost heart after the British left. Although born in Ireland, Roger de Courcy was the epitome of an English gentleman. He dressed like one too, tweeds and knickerbockers when overseeing what was left to oversee, and something approaching a frock coat when visiting his club in Dublin. Now I'll just move on to later in the novel, where the Philipstown house has been sold, and the Courcys have moved to London. Both agreed that moving to London had been a mistake, a very bad mistake indeed. Muriel de Courcy blamed herself. Roger de Courcy blamed her too, but silently. They should have gone to West Cork, where so many of their fellow Anglo-Irish gentry friends had settled, where there were plenty of bridge parties and plenty of their own kind. But they wouldn't have found a suitable husband for their daughter Anne. So instead they were living in a terraced house in a middle-class London suburb. This tiny house, with a depressing little garden, was all they could afford after all the debts were paid. Philipstown House had been sold at a disastrously low price. The only moneyed people in the country were the clergy. Unfortunately for the de Courcys, a convent of local nuns had bought a large estate nearby 6 months earlier. Such bad luck was hard to imagine. As a result, Muriel and Roger de Courcy were now in decline, passing quickly from the autumn of their lives into the winter. Now, the not-so-Anne, London dazzled her. Here there was unimaginable freedom. Here there were people who couldn't care less if your father was a plumber or a duke. People who couldn't care less if your father was a Hindu or an atheist or whatever. Here you could wear what you wanted, and she did. Here you could dye your hair bright red, and she did. It was heady stuff for a girl brought up in the stifling atmosphere of provincial Ireland. "Oh, Roger, what are we going to do about Anne?" Muriel de Courcy asked her husband despairingly one afternoon. "That man next door is up in arms again about some branch or other falling over into his garden. I've asked you over and over to cut it back. It'll only take a few minutes. I do it myself, but my arthritis is acting up again. He had no right." "Roger," Muriel de Courcy was exasperated, "I'm worried about Anne." "What's the matter? Is she ill or something? She looks right as rain to me." Muriel de Courcy closed her eyes briefly before plunging on. "She's mixing with not a nice sort of group." "Who says? She never brings anyone here." Not once did Roger de Courcy refer to their terraced house as home. "Mrs. Wilson saw her on the King's Road with an extraordinary bunch of people." "Who's Mrs. Wilson?" It was the same rigmarole every day, and was wearing Muriel de Courcy down. Out, I should really say, actually, wearing her out. It had been the same back in Ireland too, but the large house and extensive ground afford many places to escape to. Mrs. Wilson lives in number 26, 2 doors down from us. Muriel de Courcy spoke as if to a child. Why don't you try and talk to the people on the road instead of being cooped up in this wretched little house all day? The damned woman is middle class. Roger de Courcy's lips curled into an arrogant sneer. It's her silliness I have difficulty with. Anyway, we're middle class too. Muriel de Courcy smiled. Golden Husband was the only way to animate him into something resembling a human being. Theirs had been a marriage of convenience, as was so often the case with Irish gentry families. How out of date that seemed now. I've nothing to say to the likes of her. That's up to you. Now, can we please discuss what we should do about Anne? Roger de Courcy shrugged. I'm sure you'll think of something, my dear. You always do. How right he was. All decisions rested on her shoulders. She was up to it naturally. She had too many years' experience not to be, but it would be so nice if, for a single day, just for one day, he would make a decision. So Muriel de Courcy decided to send Anne away. No, Muriel de Courcy told Mrs. Wilson a week later, Anne is not on offer to a bunch of hippies to live in the wilds of Scotland. She's going on a prolonged visit to Rhodesia to stay with people we knew in Ireland. Now, here we are. As I say, that scene is set in 1956 and a lot has changed. So I'm not being anti anything. I'm just, telling of how I experienced. I was brought up in, in two religions, my mother being Protestant and my father Catholic. And so, and he was away during the war, so I lived with my Protestant grandparents. And so that experience, and throughout my life, I've been, steering my way between the two. So that has given me the experience to write about the changes that took place in Ireland, especially around the 1950s when there was just, in the 60s started an economic, an economic upsurge. So, and I was, let's say, steering between the two. As I say, I brought up a Catholic, and now I'm Church of Ireland. Okay, take care, bye.